So I've kind of been looking at this app now. I'm trying to figure out like what we could potentially implement next. And I think it'd be cool if we added the ability to edit an existing product here. So if you log in as an admin or yeah, an admin role, which I think happens to be my Bob user. So let me just go ahead and log in as Bob real quick. Probably use a better example or a better username than Bob. But if you log in as Bob, I believe he is an admin user. And what we can do is maybe add a button here so that when you click it, it takes you to an edit product page. And this will be a button that is only visible for my admin user. So let's just go ahead and make sure that that is all set up. Again, we need to add a button here that only shows up for the admin user. So if you go to the product page, we have a product card, and that is where this button is showing up. So we have is logged in, but really we should add another button here. Just add a button like this, and we're going to say button is edit. And I'm just going to make that be a link. So instead, I think what I can do is just say like to and say slash edit product maybe. I have to double check this. I'm not sure if this is actually how it works. So we got an edit button. If you click it, it doesn't actually take you to that. I forgot how you can do it. Let's see. I'm going to check React Bootstrap button with React router link. I think there's an easy way to like get this set up, but I could be wrong. Like you can add an on-click listener and you can manually like change the history. And they're saying there's an issue of just wrapping it with link. I think there's a way to like, let's see, there's two good solutions. Use the use history hook. I don't really want to have to do that because then you have to actually like do this on-click listener. And this is saying you could do a CSS route to basically make a link that looks like a button. And that might be a better approach. We could just make it a link. I don't know why I'm trying to make it a button. I'll just make it a link here because it is going to take us to a different page. And we're going to say when you click it, it takes you to an edit product page. So make sure I import that link. So I need to make sure I auto import link from React Router DOM. But one thing I'll notice is that like we actually don't know what product we're trying to edit here. So we should probably actually make this go to like an interpolated string. So I'm gonna say like slash products, and then we could do a product ID here. So I can say product underscore ID, and then I'm just gonna say slash edit. Let's save that and make sure that the button still shows up. And if I click on it, it takes me to a new URL, and it does. But we don't actually have a route that's going to show anything here. But remember, the other thing that we said we're going to do is we need to make this only show up if you have the admin role. So let's go up here and pass in another Boolean. So I'll say is admin. And we want to make sure that we only display this if is admin is true. So then this should stop showing up. And we just need to make sure that we pass the role of the user here. So I can say is admin, and then I'm going to say user dot role is equal to admin. Okay, so let's try that. Refresh the page. I'm not sure why these images are no longer loading. I'm getting a lot of like linting issues, but let's just go ahead and see why this is not working. So I am passing the is admin to the product card. Let's first of all check to make sure we have the right role. We look like we do. We have the admin role. And I think I'm probably grabbing, oh, it needs to be user.user.role. This is kind of hacky. I need to fix this real quick. But now that the user.user.role is being checked, you'll see that the edit button is showing up here. So before we like add more progress, I want to see if there's a way we can maybe refactor this to make this a little bit cleaner. And we could make a helper function probably that just basically grabs the context and returns like I don't know, if the user is admin or something. So instead of having to grab the user here, maybe we can make a custom hook that basically uses the context and returns is admin or something. So I'm going to say const is admin, going to be a function. And what this is going to do is basically call the use context method here, get back the user, and then I'm going to return user.role is equal to admin. And probably make sure we do a question mark there, so in case they are not logged in, it doesn't crash. But now what we could probably do is just use this helper hook, and that should probably return, let's just do this. Let's say isAdmin hook, and then this will be a Boolean called isAdmin. I'm going to call isAdmin hook. Let's see if this actually does what we want. So now we can actually use this Boolean down here and pass it down to the property instead of having to have that like logic here, because we're probably going to use this isAdmin in different places. Let's try doing that. Let's save it and go back and see what happens. Says the React hook use context is called in function isAdmin hook. That is neither a React function component nor a custom React hook. React component names must start with a uppercase letter. Oh, so there's like, I think there's some like thing in place where if you have a custom hook, you actually need to say like use isAdmin hook. Let's try that. If you put use in front of it as like a prefix, React knows that you're using a hook and it won't complain about that. So now it'll show if we are an admin user, and if we're not, it won't. Now the benefit of this, the benefit that we refactored this, is that now we don't actually need access to the user at all. Like we could just call this hook. That is all abstracted away from us, and now we can check if they're admin or not. We can also say const use is logged in. And we could probably do the same thing. I don't know how performant this is calling this twice, but it's probably not a big deal. But is logged in could just check if token is defined, because we kind of do that in other places in this app too. I'm going to say const is logged in is equal to this custom hook. Make sure you call it. And now I don't think we actually need to access this user thing, because it was getting kind of hacky where we had to like say user.user.token or dot whatever. So let's go down to figure out where else we're using the user thing. We are using it here. So I could just say is logged in. That is going to come from that custom hook that we wrote. And I think that might be all we need to do. Let's see where else we might be calling user. All right, so that seems like it's working fine. Everything is displaying as it was before, but let's actually try to use these methods. Again, we're just doing some refactoring. I just saw some places in the code that could probably have been cleaned up, and so we're trying to clean it up before stuff gets out of hand. It's always good to do that. Reflect on the code you've written and see if you can make it better. We want to basically export these. I think we could probably make a new hooks folder. So over here, I'm going to make a new folder called hooks. And I'm going to make one for use is admin hook.js. And I'm going to copy that code into that and just export it. And just make sure you auto import that use context here so we can use it. And then also we have another hook that we need. So use is logged in. Use is logged in. And I'm going to cut this out and put that here. Make sure you export it. Make sure you auto import that use context method. And I'm actually going to rename this. It's kind of implied that this is a hook because it starts with the keyword use. So I'm actually going to rename that and do that. Okay, so now we have two separate files for these two hooks. And now this products page could just import them like so. Let's make sure this auto imports. Okay, that one's not auto importing. Yeah, I don't know why that's not auto importing, but let's just go up here and say import it. We're going to import that from /hooks/that. And we're also going to import the other one, use admin, or use is admin. All right, so again, we're still just doing code cleanup. We're just making it easier to know if a user is logged in or an admin without having to basically pass around that user.user.role. So it's saying that use context is not defined. Oh, user context is not defined. I need to make sure I also import user context in both of these helper methods. All right, so now it's good. So if you remember, we actually show, like, we had some logic in the router to only allow someone to go to the create products page if they are an admin. So like if I try to go to create product, this works because I'm logged in as Bob. But what we want to do is on that route, remember we had all this like hard-coded hacky logic. Really what we could do is just say is admin user, or sorry, we could bring in that hook. So up here I'm going to say const is admin is equal to use is admin. Go ahead and import that and invoke it. And now instead of doing all this logic, I could just say check if the user is an admin. And if they are, this page will be accessible. Let me go ahead and move that to the top. Well, I guess it's fine there. So let's see if this works. I think I need to make sure I import that. And again, this shows up just fine because we are an admin. So I go to create product and, oh, actually it's failing. Let's see why this is failing. Object is not iterable. Object is not iterable. Cannot read property symbol iterator. I don't know why I would need to even iterate over this. Seems kind of strange. So I don't know, there must be some bug here. Maybe there's like something I'm doing that you can't actually do. Let's print out what user is here and just kind of check. And go to our console and see if we get like a cool... I hate how if you click that, it goes to a new page. Huh, yeah, I might have to Google this one. I'm not sure why it is complaining about this. Object is not iterable. Let's go ahead and Google that and put React as a keyword before our search. Wait, is it saying undefined? No, it's just saying object is not iterable. So if I comment this out, okay, well, it's going to fail, obviously, but let me just do this for right now and make sure that the page still loads. All right, so it works like that, but whenever I call that hook, it starts failing. Your context. Oh, okay. So, of course, this is the problem with React. Like, the errors that they give you are awful. They're just absolutely garbage. And the only reason I was able to find that is because I scrolled up and realized that, hey, I'm trying to use context outside of the provider here, okay? It doesn't, like, the error was not going to lead me to that. Like, if you weren't experienced, you probably would have wasted hours trying to figure out what's going on here. But the issue is because I can't call this method here. Well, I thought I was doing a cool refactoring, but it turns out that I would actually have to wrap this whole thing inside another component. So we could try to do this. We could just make a new file called router. So I'll say router.jsx. And that is going to be a component that has all of this stuff in it. And we could actually bring that in. Let me rename that to app router because we already have router defined here. So let me go ahead and import that. Import the header, import switch. Okay, it's already imported. Import route. What else do I need to import? Yeah, so we can't actually call that hook here inside of app because we'd have to do it inside of a component that's nested inside of one of these providers. So I'm going to cut this out and put it in our app router. Let me rename this to app router so it's more consistent. And inside of our app router, then we can actually call this hook. So we can say use is admin, and then we can just kind of dynamically show that route if they are an admin. And what we can do here is just basically get rid of all of this code. And instead, I'm going to bring in the app router. So this was just a silly little workaround that we had to do because you have to have like an actual React component nested in order to use that custom hook that we created. But I think it should work now. I think we just need to make sure that we've auto imported all these components. So we have to go back and make sure we import these components. Let's do the register page, login page, logout page, products page, save that, go back to the app because now we have a bunch of unused stuff. And I think this looks a little bit cleaner, hopefully. Let's try this. Let's go back to this, refresh the page and see if it crashes. Cannot read property of undefined, reading location. This is a bit of a hack. We have to start listening for location. It's kind of funny that the error actually says that this is a hack. Like we're using production code in our applications and there's comments like this. Because that's not my code. I don't think I wrote that. That's actually coming from like the router library. But what is this complaining about? Like I have to figure out why this is failing now. I'm probably importing the wrong file. So let's just go back to app router and look here. Router coming from React router. What was it before? Let's add all those back in. We're doing some heavy debugging right now. So we have to make sure we do browser router as router. And it needs to come from React router DOM. So for some reason, my auto import was bringing in some other stuff, or I selected the wrong thing. Let's go back and see that works. Okay, everything's working now. Let's delete those. Yeah, this part of the series is becoming a nightmare. All right, so now, again, all I was trying to do is refactor some code and show you like it's cleaner now because now we don't have like all this hard-coded like Boolean logic to check if we're an admin or if we're logged in. Now it's pretty straightforward. So I can go over here and log out. And if I go to create product, it doesn't load. And then also if I log in with like my other account who is not an admin, you will see that I can't go to the create product page. And also those edit buttons don't show up. So I hope that was fun. I hope you enjoyed watching me refactor some code. Let's see if there's other places that we do user.user. And there's only one place. What about user.token? All right, so we do this a couple places in the header. So we could probably refactor this to use that custom hook. So I'm gonna say const is logged in is equal to use is logged in. Call that hook, we'll get back a Boolean, and then we can kind of refactor this. So again, all we're doing is kind of like encapsulating that internal logic of how you know if you're logged in or not, instead of having this like user.token sprinkled all throughout your code base, because later on, if I decide that that's not how I want to decide if a user is logged in or not, then it's going to be a big refactoring. And here we actually do need to do user.token, so I'm going to leave that in place. Let's go back to the header and delete that because now this is not even used. And this code is a little bit cleaner. All right, so going back to our original task, we wanted to be able to edit a product. So let's log out and go back to one of our admin users. That was Bob. And let's log in. And we should be able to click on that edit button. It takes us to an edit route, but we don't actually have a page for that yet. So let's go and make a new page. Let me close all these things. All right, make a new page called edit product.jsx. And inside the edit product.jsx, it's going to pretty much look exactly similar to the create product probably. But we're going to have to just kind of do some different logic here. So let's just go ahead and copy this again, the edit product. And let's go back and make sure we import that in our app router. Now we have a separate file for the routes. So I'm going to go ahead and do, I think it was called products/product ID/edit. I think that's what it was. And I can just make sure I import edit product. Now, I think sometimes you have to do like path exact to make sure this works, or maybe it's just, maybe you need to put it in a certain order to make sure it works. So let's make sure that this works fine. So we're on the edit product page. Everything is working fine. No issue here. But we need to make sure that we use this thing that was in the URL, this parameter, and we need to use it to fetch data from the backend. So using the React router use location, I think it is, or use params, there's like another hook you can use to actually get the parameter that's in the URL. All right, so what are we trying to do? We're trying to get this token, this Mongo ID. We need to get it in our actual edit product page. So how do we do that? Well, I believe there is a hook called use params, which comes from React router. And I think we can just do this. So this will return you an object that happens to match the same property names that you defined here. So because I did :product ID, I believe we're going to get an object that comes back that has a product ID in it. So let's just go ahead and print this out because I want to make sure that I'm correct before we start doing some crazy code. And that prints out down here in the console, as you can see. So we're doing that correctly. And the idea is you need to use that product ID to fetch stuff from the backend, right? We actually need a new endpoint to getting information related to a single product. We haven't implemented the backend yet for doing this, but we are going to go ahead and just try to do that. So it kind of disregard all this code for right now. We're just going to make it so when this component mounts, it's going to fetch data. That's all we're doing. When the component mounts, so to do that, you need to use a use effect. And then when it mounts, you just keep these keep the array empty, and that will be on mounting, and it only runs once. But we want to use fetch to basically okay, but we can use Axios to actually fetch that data back. So let's go here. We'll copy that, and we're going to say const product is equal to Axios.get, and we're going to do a different endpoint. We're going to do products/product ID. This is typically how you do it in REST or RESTful APIs. You have like the main resource and then slash the ID is how you can do a GET request. And I don't think we need a header for authorization because any user should be able to hit this endpoint. And we don't need to pass any data to it. So let's just go ahead and do that GET request by itself. And remember, this actually is going to return a data property. So I'm going to map data into a variable called product. And we can just go ahead and print this out. I just know this is actually going to crash, or it's not going to work because, well, first of all, there's that silly thing where you actually have to have like a function called like get product is equal to an async function like this. And then I need to put my code into that. What happened there? Put my code inside of that function, and then I need to call it. Probably, I could probably also do a self-executing function, but I think this works fine. All right, so now we should actually see when this page loads, we do a network request to try to get that product back, but our backend crashes or sends back a 404 not found. This is a typical status code that you'll see when like you try to do something and there's no resource available. But so what we need to do, we need to actually implement this backend endpoint because we haven't done that. So let's go into the server. Let's go to server/index. And let's add a new endpoint. So I'm going to say duplicate this GET request. Remember, the GET is matching with the GET that we're doing here from Axios. So we're going to do a GET request on products / product ID. So this is very similar to how the React router works. You basically put colons and then your parameters here, and you can access those from your controller if you want. So I'm going to say make a new controller called GET product controller. And we haven't created it yet, so let's just go ahead and create that. And we are going to basically copy some code, rename this the GET product controller, and go back and make sure we import this before we forget. So similar to React router, like we need to get that ID that was sent. We need to get this Mongo ID. So I'm going to go ahead and do const :product ID equals rec.params. That's how you grab parameters from your URL that's defined with this colon. Remember, product ID is mapping to the same product ID that's found in params. That's how you do it in Express. And then just to kind of show you, I can go ahead and just print out that product ID. Just so you can believe me. I know you don't believe me what I'm doing, but this will actually work. And I'm going to comment that out real quick. And let's go to our API. And let's just go ahead and refresh this page. That's going to do a request to our backend, and we'll see that the backend printed out this product ID here. So we have the ID that we need, and now we can just use Mongoose to fetch it. And I don't remember the Mongoose get by ID. I'm sure there's like an easy get by ID function. It looks like they have a find by ID. I think this should work. So if we just uncomment this and say product.findById and pass in that ID here, I think that should be able to work. We'll return the product back to the user. And then if I go back to my React application, refresh the page, you'll see that it does request to get the product using the Mongo ID that matched this URL here. And then we actually got back that individual product. So really the next part is I need to take this data that came back and put it in state so that we can kind of show it here on the page. Now the easiest thing to do is, luckily this data matches up pretty exact with what the form is. So name, cost, and description is going to match what our form is. So we could just push that directly into our form. So let's go to the, what page is that? I think it's called Get Product. Oh, it's called Edit Product. So let's go to our Edit Product component here. And what we're going to do is we are going to just take the product data that came back and we're going to push that right into our form. Remember, the form is already set up to basically show the values here. So if we just reuse all that logic, I can say set form, and then I'm going to pass in product. There's going to be some extra data that we're putting on this form object, which we could probably omit. It might be safer to do like a low-pick or something, but this should work and we should see those things show up when we refresh the page. So now this data is actually getting populated directly from that backend request. We get the data, we put that in the React state, and these forms are bound to that React form here. This use state is bound to the inputs. And so when we override it with that product data, that's why they're all showing up here. So the last step is basically we should be able to edit stuff here and then submit it, and that should update that product. Just to play it safe though, I'm going to actually just take the values directly from this. Like we don't want to take all the stuff that's in the product. We probably just want to do like cost is product.cost. And what were the other ones? There's name and description. So I'm going to do name and then I'm going to say description. Okay, that's just to play it safe because there could be more stuff that comes back on the product that we might not even have visible in the UI. But what we're going to do is we are going to basically send this data back over to the backend once they've edited it. So let's rename this to update product. I'm going to say edit product here for the title, and I'm going to say save. So now it's a form that says save down here. And we can type in some stuff, click the save button, and that should do another request to the backend. But we need to actually change the request type. So instead of doing a post, you could do something like a patch. So a patch is basically what you can do to update items in place. Like you could just send some data over and that'll update the item. This is going to be an authorized endpoint, so we do want to make sure that the token is sent in. And then similar to that get products, we want to make sure we send in the product ID here. So let's just go ahead and change this to an interpolated string, and we should have the product ID up here, which we do. And then let's see what else we can do here. So that should do a patch to that. Now at this point, this is going to crash the backend because we haven't actually implemented that. So let me show you. If I click save, you'll see that it does request to the backend. We get a 404 because we haven't implemented a backend endpoint for that. Okay, does that make sense? So let's just go ahead and go to the backend, and we're going to implement another endpoint. I'll copy this one and change this method to patch. The reason we're using patch again is because that's what we're doing here with Axios. And you can see if you go to the headers, the request method is patch. Okay, so on our Express backend, we're saying if someone does a patch request to this URL, we're going to call a method called update product controller. All right, so let's go over here. Let's make that controller, and let's go ahead and just do this. We're going to copy the get product controller, and we're going to rename it to update product controller. And then we're going to make sure we auto import that. So what needs to change about this? We still need to get the product. So we're going to do find by ID using the product ID that came back in the URL of the params. But now we actually have like a payload that's sent over. Like what I need to do is I need to basically update this product with the data that came over. So I think what I can do is just say object.assign, and I'm going to say rec.body. And of course, you're going to have to do some type of validation to make sure that we only have like cost, name, and description coming over. In fact, let's just do that now. It's probably going to be a lot safer if we do that. So I'm going to say cost is rec.body.cost, name, and then description is rec.body.description. And we could abstract this out to constant body is equal to that. It's a little bit cleaner. And we can even take it a step further if you wanted to. Like I said, like cost, name, description. And honestly, that'll probably be a lot cleaner. I should have done that to begin with, so I could just pass it like this. So what we're doing while we're doing this is because we don't want anyone to send whatever they want to the backend. We want to only allow them to update certain things so that they can't like modify the product in ways that we don't want. But maybe it's not that big of a deal. So when this is all done, we probably need to save it. So I think I can call product.save. You know what? I bet you there's a way in Mongoose to update it. I think I'm probably doing something wrong. Let me go here and say update. I'm sure there's an update method. Mongoose update a model instance. So let's see if they have update. Up using the save. Yeah, it looks like I'm doing it right. You take the model, you change what you want, and you click save, or you run save. So I think that should be fine. But let's just test this out. Let's go to the UI. Let's add some exclamation marks here, and let's click save. That did a backend request. It's sent over down here. If you see, it's sent over paper towels with exclamation marks. And if we look at what we got back an old instance. So we probably need to fix that. But what I want to see is if I refresh the page, yeah, it didn't persist that. So let's go back and try to figure out why. Oh, okay. Sorry, so I kind of went too fast. Object assign is a method that you can do to basically push new values onto an object on JavaScript. The first argument needs to be the object that you're trying to assign values to, and then the second one is going to be the things that you're pushing onto it. So I think this might actually be what we want instead. So let's do exclamation marks again. Click save. Look at the data, and we did get back paper towels exclamation marks, so that's working fine. But yeah, so the data is persisted. You see I can like add stuff to all this, save it, refresh the page, and we get the data. You'll notice that it's clearing the form. That's kind of because we need to probably redirect the user back to the home page when they do that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, instead of setting the form to the default form object, I'm just going to say, let's bring in the history So I'm going to say const history equals use history. Remember, this is a hook that React Router provides us. And we could say history.push and just go back to the dashboard. So let's do that. Instead of clearing out the form, just go back to the dashboard. So now let's actually try this out a little bit. Let's just change some stuff. Click save. We go back to the dashboard, go here, add some stuff, go back. And now we're actually editing all of these fields like on the fly. So that's pretty cool. We're actually doing like the U character in the whole CRUD. So we're updating stuff. All right, so I'm going to wrap this this part up. If you like watching this video, give me a thumbs up. Also, be sure to leave a comment below if you have any suggestions of how I can improve my code. I do plan to refactor these out into service functions in a bit. But I think this was a good overview of doing like the update name in CRUD. So hope you learned something and stay tuned for the next video.